Well, hello, folks, and I'm here with Frank Clifford, and we're here to talk about his upcoming course for Astrology University, Professional Forecasting in Astrology. And this is our first certificate course offered at Astrology University. So if you take this course and you choose to, you can complete the requirements to actually get a certificate at the end of it. So Frank's going to tell us all about that, and he's going to tell us about his course. The course is going to take place from April 23rd to June 23rd, 2019, over a series of weeks. So as we talk today, we'll tell you a little bit more about all the details. But thanks for joining us today, Frank.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for being here. Yes.
Yes, I'm here. You're here. We're here. Mercury's conjunct Neptune today, and Pisces. So I think we're here. I think we're all here.
It is. Nobody has spiked my Coke today, so I'm pretty okay. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, there's still time. There's still time in the day.
There is.
So can you tell folks a little bit about, so I know that you've presented this course before, and what we're going to be offering folks is a series of recordings of the course in addition to live sessions as well, live Q&A sessions. So, but can you tell us a little bit about what your inspiration was to create the course?
Well, I've come across all different approaches to forecasting, and sometimes I think sometimes people overdo it and they get very anxious because there's too much information. They're doing maybe 3, 4, 5 techniques, trying to take into account all those different areas. And I like to keep it simple. Those of you who have seen my webinars on Astrology University will know I'm a big fan of just getting to the heart of the matter if I can, using relatively simple techniques, but trying to go deep with the information or deep with the story. So I'm never going to be overloading people with techniques, but in the course we do introduce obviously transits, directions, the lunar gestation cycle, which was pioneered by Dietrich Pessin, and a number of other things, including the consultation chart as well. So lots of things you'll learn session by session, but it's always going to come back to the natal chart. It's always going to come back to your understanding of the individual signs and planets. So it comes into, it sort of forms a cohesive whole by the end of it. So it's it was, yeah, my idea originally was to just really focus on the natal chart, focus on the philosophy of forecasting. So you're going in there with the right expectations, and the clients have the right expectations as well, because that's obviously a big issue in terms of forecasting versus prediction.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, which was, I know that your approach to forecasting, and this is called a forecasting course and not predictive astrology, for instance. And I wonder if you can tell people a little bit about your word choice there and what your philosophy is about forecasting.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the idea of prediction just seems to take away anybody's right to choose or to be heavily involved in their lives. So it drives me a little bit crazy that people think that astrology can predict. I think when you've got context and you're working with a client, you can actively participate in the transit together, and helping the client understand what the season is. So whether October might be a very Jupiterian season for them. The chart doesn't say where they are in their lives. The natal chart doesn't say, it doesn't tell of their relationship with each of the planets, the work they've done on themselves, where they've decided to go with their horoscopes, with their lives. So you always need context from the client. So really, starting from that assumption, really, that you're going to be working with particular transits or directions or progressions in somebody's chart, rather than predict what's going to happen to them, tell them the season and help them or empower them to make a decision that works for them during that time.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what we like at Astrology University, is helping empower people for sure. So really excited to have this course offered. And this course is actually also the longest course we have, even though you are focusing on presenting the techniques in a way that people can take in, it's several weeks. And so you are going to be able to cover a lot of ground and a lot of material. And students who want to do the certification are going to be able to dig in a little bit more and really work with the material from week to week and keep up with it and integrate it. So it's not just like listening to you talk, it's actually working with the material. So can you tell folks a little bit about what you're going to be asking them to do if they want to get the certificate?
Sure, of course. I mean, week by week, they've got pre-recorded sessions. They'll have the PowerPoint notes, for instance, on a PDF to print out, to make notes, the charts to look at, etc. There's a lot of material, there's a lot of reading material attached as well. The certificate itself is pretty straightforward. There are a number of questions, getting them to think about their own charts, to share some ideas, to share some events, and to look for the astrology that explains that. And there are some examples that I've got, I think based on the 2018 ephemeris, if I'm not mistaken, which we supply, etc. So there's lots of ways to tackle the course, but the coursework itself is pretty straightforward, and it's really getting people to think outside of the box and to use their own experiences to make the most of transits, progressions, etc., whatever we look at. Ultimately, the sessions, the coursework are guided to have people focus on how to construct a ethical and helpful interpretation, and to then communicate that on paper. And the Q&As that we're doing all the way through the course are opportunities to have a look at your own charts as well, to tackle certain examples of how to combine maybe a lunar solar arc direction along with maybe a Saturn transit. So there's lots of opportunity, a lot of scope to look at charts along the way. And yeah, there's a lot of information there, but hopefully it all comes together and offers somebody a very holistic and helpful guide.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's where a lot of students get stuck, is we'll learn these different techniques, and you might take a transit course or a solar arc course, and then students are like, but wait, how do I put those together in one reading? And so they're going to get not only some teaching about that in this course, where you're going to introduce them to several techniques and show them what that kind of synthesis looks like, but there are going to be these 4 Q&A sessions where if they're really stuck, they can just ask you a question, and they're not like just reading a book and can't ask you. So
yes, and most books have amazing examples that work really well, and because they've been chosen by the writer. And the book I put out last year, the Solar Art Directions book, I actually picked out cases that really interested me and thought, if this works, the chart will show it. So I almost challenge myself to use examples and to get the best out of them, rather than just select half a dozen examples that show everything or show how it all works. What we do know is that clients come to see us when everything is being activated in their chart. Otherwise, they wouldn't spend $100 or a couple $100 on a consultation if they were just having a lovely Jupiter transit. They spend that on a makeover or a holiday. So when clients come, they've got Jupiter active, Uranus, Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, all going on in their chart. So it's a challenge for people to put it together. And one of the things that you do, and I'll be teaching, is to listen to what the client has to say, and the client will direct you. So if the client says to you, well, at the moment everything is upside down, our astrological ear can hear Uranus, and we're guided perhaps to be talking first of all about the Uranus transit they're having, or the Uranus solar arc direction they're having. So listening to the client is one of the great things we can do, and they'll guide us to which planet maybe to prioritize, or at least to talk about first when we're doing forecasting. So as always, clients know far more about themselves and their charts than we do on some level. So it's worth listening to them in a session. And that's one of the things that we teach as well.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of that approach myself, and I know Mark Jones is as well. I mean, yeah, the client knows what's up, and you can get right to the heart of the matter by listening to them and following their lead. So I love that. Well, this next part isn't to embarrass you, Frank, but I just want to read, since you presented this course before, we have some reviews and feedback from people who've taken the course. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that with folks who are listening. A person from South Africa said, "I'm very much enjoying working my way through the brilliant course, and it's been restoring my faith in the art of astrology and the good-heartedness of the teacher." And that's you, Frank.
Thank you.
We'll try to make you turn red by the end of this. Here's another one. "I really enjoyed your class, so well organized and presented in such a kindly and thorough manner." And that's from someone in Australia. A student in Italy said, "Thank you for giving me and all the others a wonderful opportunity to really study in depth transits and directions and all the rest, and to share your knowledge, but more than that, your insights." So yeah, lots of great feedback that came in for the course. So I know that students who decide to sign up, you're really in for a treat. You can register. If you register early, you get a little bit of a price break there. Early registration ends March 31st, which is here in just a few days. When you sign up, you'll get access to the course. The course will actually be delivered over a series of weeks. So when you sign up, you won't just see all of the lessons right when you log in. You'll see lesson 1 that first week of April 23rd, and then every Tuesday we'll release the content for the next lesson. And then the live sessions are going to take place May 12th, May 19th, June 16th, and June 23rd. So we've deliberately spaced out the Q&As over the course so that, you know, as you're working through the material, if you get stuck, you can ask questions as you have them and get some feedback from Frank.
And they're recorded as well. So if you have to miss them, what I'll be doing is I'll be answering any questions that come through, usually at the Q&A, if they're not answered elsewhere in the course, but also people who are present will be looking at as many charts as possible live during that point. But if you can't make it, there's always a recording, and hopefully some of your questions will be on there anyway, some of the general questions. Yeah.
Great. And looks like you have a chart here. So you're going to share a little something with us today?
Yes. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Yes, I got this chart recently. I've been wanting the chart of Monica Seles for years, and it just popped up on Astro Databank after years. And I was fascinated because those of you who remember Monica Seles as a professional tennis player, she's now more of a motivator and fundraiser, philanthropist nowadays. But you may remember that she was just astonishing in the late 80s, early 90s. She came on as a 16-year-old and had 2 or 3 years of remarkable tennis where she became the #1 in the world. And her chart is fascinating. It's the 2nd of December, 73, about 5 in the morning. And it's a chart that seems to be pretty accurate in terms of not needing any rectification. And she was born in Novi Sad in Serbia. I love her chart because it's got, just checking it out, there's a Mars-Uranus opposition that's a very powerful close aspect in a T-square. So we've got Uranus here, opposite Mars in a T-square to Venus. And one of the things I teach in the course on solar art directions, which is one of my big things I love to teach because it's such an easy thing to learn and so accurate as a forecasting system. One of the things I teach is that when you've got very tight aspects, very close aspects in the chart, you're in for often a very dramatic or power-punched year in some way. And this Mars, Uranus, Venus is all within a degree. So when that gets triggered by transit or direction, or it moves itself by solar arc, it's going to really demonstrate the power of such an important T-square in her chart. And I love the fact that she's Scorpio rising with Mercury on the ascendant natally. And if you remember Monica Seles, she was so intense on court that she grunted and so loudly than anybody else. And that's so Mercury and Scorpio on the ascendant. It's not a sort of like nice higher Libra type of gentle thing. It's Mercury and Scorpio on the ascendant. So she was famous for that intensity and that ruthlessness on the court. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting observation. But if we take a look at the bi-wheel, which hopefully you can see, and we just one of the great things about the Q&As and also just having programs these days that do real time for you is that you can move the chart forward a year. So I'm just moving her solar arc through the years to the point where the Uranus and Mars become angular here. So solar arc Uranus starts off 26 Libra in the 12th and hits the ascendant in 1993, and Mars hits the descendant that year, and Venus hits the 4th house by equal, but they're all involved in the ascendant descendant. And this, of course, was the moment that changed her life. This was when she was stabbed on court in the most horrendous moment I think I've ever seen on professional tennis or any professional sport. But she was playing, and there was a deranged fan of Steffi Graf, who was her main rival at the time, and he lunged forward and stabbed her in the back while she was sitting down in between points. And it changed her life. She withdrew from the game for a few years. She had a physical scar. It just missed her by, I think, a few centimeters, missed her heart, or missed one of the main organs. It was an extreme example of Mars opposite Uranus from Aries to Libra, coming to the ascendant descendant, where she was attacked suddenly in this outrageous moment of violence. Probably not the best example to use in terms of nice and soft and easy things, but it shows how the chart, when you've got a remarkable Mars-Uranus aspect that talks about sudden events, sudden violence, sudden changes, energy, things happening that suddenly turn things upside down. And she spent 2-3 years really recovering emotionally, but many years after that, it triggered an eating disorder, it triggered body issues. Her father was dying at the same time. It was one of those really, truly massive events in her life. And so the Mars-Uranus came to the ascendant-descendant. Venus was also here. And by transit, the day that she was stabbed, Saturn was at 29 Aquarius as well. So she had a transiting Saturn on her moon, which triggered a lot of eating issues, health issues, and also, no doubt, a huge emotional barrier, having been stabbed. But also the Mars on the descendant and the Uranus on the ascendant by solar arc was a life-changing point. So that's a rather violent example, but one that's just really interested me recently because of the remarkable change that occurred during that time. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Sorry. Yes, that was a long explanation, but
I was so transfixed. I was like waiting for more. I was like, let's hear about the next one. What happened next?
One of the things I really want to get across in the course is that your chart, your natal chart is the blueprint for what happens to you, what you choose to happen to you. In this case, it was a unexpected fit of somebody else's violence that changed her life, and I wouldn't say in any way she made that happen or asked for it in any way, of course, but it really changed her ascendant descendant, how she was in public, with people, her surroundings, her environment, and she withdrew for quite some time with that. But it's I have a book here actually. It's called Getting a Grip on my game, my body, my mind, myself, and it's fascinating reading of what happens when the unexpected happens. So the natal chart,
I think, go ahead.
But just the natal chart shows that Mars-Uranus opposition, which at its worst is sudden violence from other people or sudden provocation in some way. Or what she does now with that Mars-Uranus opposition in her life is to make people aware of violence, make people aware not to be a victim of things. So she's turning that now into a very proactive Mars-Uranus energy, having suffered at the very worst of it.
And I love that story as well, with what you were just describing with her book, because when you have a traumatic event like that, there's the event, but there's what you do after it. There's a Buddhist teaching about the first dart and the second dart, and how the first dart is the thing that happens that you're maybe not in control of, or it's the experience of pain. But then the second dart is the experience of suffering, which we're in charge of. And, even though the event is, huge and dramatic as kind of signified by this T-square, it's still one that she's able to work with and over time turn around and turn into something empowering for herself and for others, which is that's pretty beautiful story there.
It is, but she was 19 when it happened as well.
Right. Yeah, and when you're 19, what you don't have those kind of resources, inner resources or outer resources sometimes as well.
And all she's doing is wanting to play tennis. She's not not running. She's not running for president, where you get all sorts of things and provoke people, and you're on one side or the other. Literally, she's earning a living by being the best she can be, which again is a very Mars-Uranus thing. Mars is about excellence, and Uranus is the idea of perfection. So Mars-Uranus again links to that power to be perfect, that desire, that drive to achieve a level of perfection and personal excellence. So
right, and the attack just literally coming out of nowhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, Frank. That's a good teaser there. Little tasty snack for what's to come. So thanks for sharing that, and I'm really glad that you joined us today. And I'm super excited to offer your course for the folks at Astrology University. So I hope you can tune in. Head over to Astrology University to sign up. You'll find a link right there on the homepage right now if you're watching this in just before the course, and it's called the Professional Forecasting in Astrology Certificate Course. You'll find a little graphic icon for it on the homepage. And if you are tuning in later, the URL for the course is astrologyuniversity.com/professional-forecasting-certificate. So I hope you can tune in. And thanks again, Frank, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Tony, and see you soon. Thanks again for that.
Okay.